organizers of the No Kings Alliance and the We Ain't Buying It campaign, urging Americans to withhold their purchasing power to protest, quote, corporations enabling the Trump administration's abuses of power.
America, the boomers and white single ladies are back at it again with one of the nation's biggest protests that you never heard of. They launched something called the We Ain't Buying It campaign, targeting Amazon, Target, and Home Depot during Black Friday weekend because these companies supposedly caved to Trump's bias attacks on DEI. But here's what's absolutely hilarious. This boycott was so successful that it made a few heads turn in the wrong direction, by the way. While 168 million Americans were shopping this holiday weekend, these activists convinced themselves that their participation was going to bring corporate America to its knees by not shopping for 5 whole days.
We Ain't Buying It is a 5-day economic pressure campaign. So it's all about taking our dollars and taking our power back.
What is up, guys? TYSON DELACRUZ here. Thank you so much for rocking with me. This case perfectly shows how out-of-touch activist groups think they can dictate corporate policy by threatening to withhold their participation in an economy that they probably weren't contributing much to anyways. Let me break down the math on this supposedly earth-shaking boycott. According to the organizers, 5 million people participated in their No Kings marches, an economic boycott. But as one expert perfectly pointed out, we're a country of 350 million people. So this represents 3% of the population trying to dictate the political affiliations of large businesses that serve everybody. Think about the arrogance here. 3% of the population thinks they can force major corporations to take political positions by threatening not to shop. Meanwhile, 168 million Americans were actually out spending money. During the same weekend, these activists were staging their economic pressure campaign.
Part of the campaign is urging shoppers to stop spending their money at large retail stores and instead shift their buying power to small, local businesses.
The contrast here is absolutely perfect. While 168 million Americans were participating in the actual economy, these activists were convincing themselves that they were making a difference by not participating. It's like trying to influence a football game by refusing to buy tickets you weren't going to buy anyways. Now let's debunk the central premise of this boycott, that Amazon, Target, and Home Depot somehow caved to Trump's attacks on DEI programs. What actually happened is that these companies made a business decision based on marketing realities and legal considerations, not political pressure.
Amazon, Target, and Home Depot the focus of a joint boycott from No Kings and We Ain't Buying It. According to the campaign's website, quote, this action is taking direct aim at Target for caving to this administration's biased attacks on DEI, Home Depot for allowing and colluding with ICE to kidnap our neighbors on their properties, and Amazon for funding this administration to secure their own corporate tax cuts.
Listen to their accusations. Target for caving to this administration's biased attacks on DEI, Home Depot for allowing and colluding with ICE to kidnap our neighbors, and Amazon for funding this administration to secure their own corporate tax cuts. Every single one of these claims is either false or a gross mischaracterization.
We Ain't Buying It is a 5-day economic pressure campaign. So it's all about taking our dollars and taking our power back.
Target didn't cave to anti-DEI attacks. They made a business decision based on the customer feedback and market research. Home Depot isn't colluding with ICE. They're following federal law like every other business should. Amazon isn't funding the administration. They're operating in a regulated economy where all businesses pay taxes and follow federal regulation. These activists have convinced themselves they're building economic muscle and teaching people they can vote with their dollars. But here's the reality check. Delaying purchases for 5 days has virtually no impact on major retailers beyond forcing them to carry inventory for a few extra days.
We want to build this muscle of economic non-cooperation, reminding people that you can vote with your dollars as well, and how powerful that is when we do it collectively.
These companies have weathered actual economic downturns, supply chain crises, global pandemics. A 5-day boycott by 3% or less of the population isn't even going to be a blimp on their radar. Activists talk about collective power and economic non-corporation, but they're fundamentally misunderstanding how retail economics actually work. These companies make billions of dollars in revenue annually. A temporary dip from less than 3% of the consumers isn't going to change their corporate governance or political positions. Here's the reality check these activists need. Local businesses depend on supply chains, logistics networks, and economic infrastructures that companies like Amazon, Target, and Home Depot actually provide. When you attack major retailers, you're attacking the foundation that makes local commerce possible.
Aside from the politics behind the campaign, local business owner Justice Smithers shared what he's experienced as the push to shop small continues.
I have recognized a big shift where people are wanting to be more intentional with their buying power and where their money is going.
The local business owner they interviewed talked about people being more intentional with their buying power, which is absolutely fine, but that's a personal choice, not a political weapon. Most people shop based on convenience, price, and quality, not corporate political position on DEI programs. What these activists refuse to acknowledge is the historical pattern of failed boycotts against major corporations. The Associated Press reported that a 24-hour economic blackout in February made little impact, but organizers claim the movement starts small and snowball over time.
If we keep doing it, it snowballs, it gets bigger.
Protest organizers asking consumers to spend time with family.
This is classic activist delusion. When their boycotts fail to achieve immediate results, they claim it's part of a long-term strategy that will eventually snowball. But the reality is that most corporate boycotts fail because they're based on political positions that don't align with the majority of the customers.
Well, we have to stand together. We have to stand together for inclusion. We have to stand together for each other's rights. We have to stand together for those people that are being grabbed off the streets for no good reason.
Listen to their rhetoric about people being grabbed off the street for no good reason. They're framing legal immigration enforcement as some kind of human rights violation. This is the same mindset that thinks corporations should take political positions against federal law enforcement. Let's be honest about the actual economic impact of this particular boycott. It is essentially zero. Americans spend $11.8 billion on Black Friday alone and $13.3 billion on Cyber Monday just last year. The idea that less than 3% of the population are going to delay purchases for 5 days is going to change corporate behavior is honestly, guys, very, very laughable here. The protesters claim they want to see empty stores throughout the weekend, but the reality is that 168 million Americans were shopping, while less than 3% of the population, these activists, were patting themselves on the back for not participating in the economy. These stores were not empty. They were packed with actual customers.
We want to see empty stores today and throughout the weekend.
Instead, the campaign is urging shoppers to spend their money at local mom and pop businesses.
The fundamental problem with this boycott is that it's based on political positions that most Americans don't share. The majority of consumers don't want corporations taking political stances. They want good products at a fair price with reliable service. The most ridiculous aspect of these boycotts is that activists claim that they're fighting against an authoritarian regime by not shopping at Target. They're positioning retail boycotts as some kind of resistance movements against tyranny, when they're really just upset that companies won't take their preferred political positions.
Our hope is that this will send a big message to these corporations who, once again, are simply bending the knee to this authoritarian regime.
This is peak boomer and white single cat lady activism, comparing not shopping to Home Depot to resisting authoritarianism. They've convinced themselves that their consumer choices are acts of political resistance when they're really just inconveniencing themselves for no meaningful impact at all. The activists talk about corporations bending the knee to an authoritarian regime, but what they really mean is that companies are following federal law and making business decisions based off market realities rather than activist demands. America, this "we ain't buying it" campaign perfectly captures everything wrong with modern activist movements. You have 3% of the population trying to dictate corporate policy through economic threats that have zero meaningful impact, while 168 million Americans are actually participating in the economy that they're trying to disrupt. The boomers and the white single ladies behind this boycott have convinced themselves they're building economic muscle and fighting authoritarianism by not shopping for 5 days. In reality, they're just removing themselves from an economy that functions perfectly well without their participation. This boycott backfired so spectacularly that they're actually highlighting how irrelevant these activist groups are to the broader economy. These boomers and white single cat ladies thought that they were making a statement, but all they did was prove that American commerce functions just fine without their participation. Let me know what you guys think about this. Drop it down in the comments section down below. Smash the like button if you kindly would. Share, subscribe, and as always, guys, I'll catch you on the next one.